Thank you for tuning in with us today. I am Jewel Green, and this is Book Club Corner. And today we have with us uh, a lovely local author. But every Wednesday, we're here for Book Club Corner, where we chat with authors and writers about the literary arts, their books, and their love for the written word. And today we have with us local author, multilingual interpreter, Gennike Myers. And we welcome you with us today, Gennike.
Gracias.
I told her we're gonna do some Spanish because let me tell you, I want to get in some of my Spanish. So, hola a todos.
Buenos días.
¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien, gracias. ¿Y tú?
Ay, muy bien, muy bien. And we'll be even better when I tell you about this wine that we're having this morning. So today we want to thank our sponsor. This is from our wonderful sponsor, and we're having some cassava wine from Jofield Wines. This is a smooth blend, and we love our local winemakers. He's using, ground provisions and things from the earth to make his wine, and this is an awesome blend. And we do the 5 S's of wine tasting here at Book Club. So we see the wine. This is a white wine, right? We'll start with that. And then we swill the wine. We look for the legs, that's the sugar content. And then we sniff the wine.
I'm not sure if I'm detecting the cassava, but let's sniff again.
And then we sip and savor.
So we would say saludo
I
in
love
Spanish,
that.
yes.
Saludo.
Chin chin. Okay. Yes, I got the cassava. I got the cassava.
It takes you on the back of the... Very delicious. We love this. Wonderful. At brunch, we have to take some brunch. We get some wine in us and we talk about books, and we love it here at Book Club Corner. And we're talking to Gennike Myers, and Gennike's book is called CARICOM, Good Offices, Good Neighbors. And when I saw the title of your book, I said, Good Offices. What do you mean by that? And I asked you, is that, was that something significant? And I want you to tell us, what is the significance of that term, good offices and good neighbors? And why did you decide to write a book about this topic?
Well, I'm glad that title got your attention. It means that I did something right along the way.
Yes.
But good offices is a fancy term to say something super simple. It's influence. How influence is exercised, how we can use our good offices, our good influence, our good reputation to get things done. Very simply put. Now that it really is founded on the notion of having a reputation. You have to have a good reputation in order to be able to extend influence to get people to do something. Now, there's no malicious intent. It's to get something done in a positive way. And I wanted to highlight in my book how CARICOM, the Caribbean Community, as a regional organization, uses its good reputation, its ability to influence, to be able to do good in the context of the Venezuelan crisis in particular.
And I love that idea that, CARICOM is an entity that's as a vehicle to create a better situation than what is happening, right? Whether it's for mediation, whether it's for talks, whether it's to help a situation that's not the best happening in the Caribbean. When we talk of CARICOM, and for those of you out there who are wondering, CARICOM, I've heard of it before. It just means Caribbean community, right? And we are one Caribbean community. I remember my mother talking about the Federation of the West Indies. And whenever I hear about CARICOM, my ears get piqued, and I asked, a few people, I've done some research and some reading, And CARICOM, in terms of the federation, it is literally the federation didn't work out, and now we have CARICOM, you know. And I have a few friends in the EC Islands, and she said we went to a workshop, and she said, Jewel, how y'all doing in Trinidad and Jamaica now that y'all not in the federation?
I
How
think
how
it's an
y'all
ongoing.
doing?
I think it's an ongoing debate. I
Yes.
think there's some folks who have a bit of nostalgia about the West Indies Federation. But what I would hasten to point out is that that federation was a creation of the United Kingdom. You had several countries, about 10 countries, which were British provinces at the time, so they were still part of the colony, who wanted their independence. And the UK was saying, well, okay, we'll allow you to organize yourselves as a federation. So the impetus was not from the islands themselves, so to speak. This was a creation, it was crafted by the UK, by the very same colonizer that we were trying to gain independence from. So that's my opinion. And again, or their voices will contend. But my opinion is that it was doomed to fail because the whole initiative did not come from us. Whereas, and that was back in 58 or so. Then you had, so as we famously know, Dr. Eric Williams, the first Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, said, one from 10 is not. One, Jamaica at the time decided to pull out, and so that fell apart. But then, back in 1973, so yeah, more than 10 years later, we had the birth of the Caribbean community, which really came out of the bowels of newly independent states, because by then these countries had gotten their independence from Great Britain, and they decided, look, let's come together and let's form this Caribbean community. And I think even the name is very significant, that we saw ourselves as a community as opposed to the previous incarnation, which was a federation. So even that name federation gives you an idea of sort of federated state. But we saw ourselves as a community, and that is a thing that I hold on to. So when we call, we refer to CARICOM, the Caribbean community, and as we were talking about earlier, I like to think of us as a Caribbean family, a wide Caribbean family.
I love that idea. And while I was, getting into your book, and let me just say, because we love to be read to in Book Club Corner, so don't think you're getting away, because this is a heavy topic
Well,
today.
you're holding the
But
English version, so you could read. I have the Spanish one.
we want some Spanish. Listen, we're very multilingual and cultured here in Book Club Corner. So when I was reading the book, I saw that you had, we were talking about the CARICOM in relation to this Venezuelan crisis, right? And really and truly, you started this as a dissertation. This wasn't going to be a book. This was your dissertation for your master's in diplomacy. What made you decide to take your research and your material and turn it into a book or publish it as a book? Where did the idea come from?
Thanks for allowing me to share that part of the journey. So, yes, I had to find a topic for my master. I was doing a master's in diplomacy at the time, and I had to submit some sort of topic for my thesis. And interestingly enough, I was working in Bangladesh at the time in one of the largest population movement operations. We're 1.2 million in Trinidad and Tobago, and there I was working in an environment where there were 1 million refugees. And so that was my initial thought. Let me do something about diplomacy in that scenario. But then I came home on vacation around that time, October, when Trinidad and Tobago was doing a registration exercise for Venezuelan migrants here. And right here in Tobago, we were seeing lines of Venezuelans on the pavement, sleeping on the ground. And I said, but this can't be happening in my land, and I'm writing about something far away. So I changed the dissertation topic and delved into the whole matter of the Venezuelan crisis, what was pushing the Venezuelans to go wherever they could, and more particularly for those who came into the Caribbean region, because the natural thing would have been to go to neighboring Spanish-speaking countries, but of course they were going far and wide into the English-speaking countries as well, including Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, which are both members of CARICOM. And during the course of my research, I realized, but wait a minute, we have an official CARICOM position on what is happening in Venezuela, and the position was, we're not going to intervene, we're not going to interfere. It's the principles of non-interference, non-intervention, which is international law. But then every Monday morning, you had a Caribbean nation state basically expressing something different to what CARICOM had said. And I said, this needs greater attention. And that is how I delved into that subject matter for my thesis, which then became a book.
I love that you looked at what was happening home. It's always best as authors. When we write, we want to write from a place of knowledge. We want to write from a place of what's happening, right? We want to be the voice for whatever situation, social issues, or whatever we might be noticing as artists, as creatives. We speak for what we're seeing in our society. And I like that you said, you were wondering what's happening here with the crisis with the Venezuelan migrants versus, where you had come from, which was in Bangladesh, and what was going on there. And, on a lighter note, one of the things I have noticed across the Caribbean community that ties us together is wine. I just wanted to put in a plug for all my winemakers across the Caribbean, and I meet them as I travel from place to place. Kudos to you.
Cheers.
Thanks again, Joe Field Wines, for this cassava wine.
Santé. So the French say santé, meaning to your health. So I will toast to the health of the Caribbean community and Caribbean people everywhere.
I love it. And, I always wonder, because as an entrepreneur myself, I did a winemaking course. I started a company to do wines, and only to find out that it was not something that was going to be easy to assimilate as a Caribbean person, right? In terms of export, imports, licensing, and all of that. That's one of the things we want CARICOM to do. We're looking towards CARICOM to make sure that it opens doors for us CARICOM nationals to be able to move, to be able to ply our trade, whether we're entrepreneurs, craftsmen. We want to be able to move, and we know that, just putting it out there, the CARICOM community had their meeting. This is their 50th anniversary, and happy 50th anniversary, Caribbean neighbors. And they've made a decision that you're not going to need the skill certificate anymore. You are going to be able to travel freely and work freely as a CARICOM national throughout the Caribbean. But that's going to come into law sometime next year. And
Correct.
one of the things, one of the organizations we always talk about in terms of CARICOM that has worked well is cricket. And I just have to bring
I think
that
some
up.
people will beg to differ with you in terms of it working well or performing well, but it is undeniable that, to come back to even what I was saying earlier, as a Caribbean national, when I work abroad, I carry the Caribbean flag. And when I landed in Bangladesh, people didn't know where I was from. Now I said Caribbean, I'm from the Caribbean. Okay, Trinidad and Tobago, I'm from the Caribbean. They still look at me quizzingly. And then when I say Trinidad and Tobago, oh, Brian Lara, Dwayne Bravo. And then I remembered, oh, yes, right. Yeah, there's a cricket connection. And then they quickly switch to, yes, West Indies, West Indies. So we have a brand that is well known across the globe.
Yes.
I think we don't appreciate it enough. Perhaps others appreciate it more than we do within the region. But certainly the West Indies brand, West Indies cricket team, has done a tremendous work in putting us literally on the map.
Yes, we have to talk about that. Whenever you start to talk about CARICOM or Caribbean community, we have to always look at that one. I would say that one sport that came out of pre-emancipation, right? The cricket.
Yes.
And when we look at cricket, it is a brand, it is an organization, a sport that really melded us as a Caribbean community, and put us on the map. And we talk about, the cricketers of not just Brian Lara, but the ones from before, Sir Walter, oh gosh, what is his name?
Vivian Richards,
Yes,
some
the
of the
three
grand,
W's. We talk about all them all the time, and it's a really good brand that they had. And I think they were, great ambassadors for the Caribbean community and Trinidad and Tobago as a whole, each West Indian island. And when we look at what you have in this book, because I'm going to give you the English version so you can read something. Let me tell you where I want you to read from.
Don't make me translate for myself.
So I looked at the page 54 conclusion. I like that. But before I do that, I'm going to read the back of the book because the way it was put together, this summary in the back of the book, it really made me feel to read the rest of the book, right? So you have here where it says, though small in total population size, CARICOM represents a voting bloc of 15 member states with the power to sway decisions taken in wider regional and international organizations. By maintaining a unified front, CARICOM can play a greater role as mediator, extended good offices to Venezuela's government and opposition leaders as they seek to resolve the ensuing political crisis. And what jumped out of me as an author is that you were able to succinctly put a summary together that would make a person interested understand what the book was about. And authors out there, we want to tell you, this is what we need in the back of your book. When you're doing a summary, people want to be able to understand succinctly what is in your book. We don't want it to be a microscopic dot. We want a wide vision of what's happening. And this summary talks about CARICOM representing a voting bloc of 15 member states. Tell me about that, because I also read in your book that there are other members besides full members in CARICOM.
Yeah, so that's something that is often overlooked. And so I wanted to highlight it in my book. As I said earlier, I was quite disappointed in seeing that CARICOM had a position on Venezuela, but then you had individual Caribbean leaders who decided that they had their own position and they were standing alone. But what we fail to realize is that 15 votes in the wider organization, such as the Organization of American States, or even within the United Nations. Incidentally, the United Nations General Assembly is coming up soon in October, and we have a Trinidad and Tobago diplomat who is the president of the UN, of that session, the 78th session of the UN. So this is no small task. And what I'm basically saying in the book is that if we stand together as 15 voices, 15 votes, because at that point, it doesn't matter how small you are, it doesn't matter what your GDP is, it doesn't matter the size of your population, whether it's 100,000 or 12 million, as in the case of Haiti. What matters is you are one sovereign, independent country, and you have one vote. And so my theory is that if we stand together as a Caribbean community, we have 15 votes that could change the outcomes in those bigger organizations. And very often, let me say this too, you have other nations who are using their own diplomatic skills to try to sway individual CARICOM countries to vote in their favor on particular matters, whether it's security matters or trade or whatever have you. And I'm saying that we CARICOM nations must not allow ourselves to be used by a puppet master anywhere in this world to be able to support them if we don't stand together on those issues. Remember, 15 voices. If we stand as one, we're going to change the outcomes, but we don't see it that way, unfortunately.
I think a few of us do, but perhaps not enough of us do.
Well, clearly some of our leaders don't. When you see how certain countries vote on particular matters, you may have one official CARICOM position, as was the case with Venezuela when that commotion was happening after the Venezuelan presidential elections, where some were saying, well, we are backing Maduro as the president. Others are saying, well, no, we are backing Juan Guaido. CARICOM said officially, listen, there was an election. Matter of fact, CARICOM was invited to be an election observer. We were present on the ground in the preparations for those elections, and we sort of gave a seal of approval for those elections. So how could it be then that after the elections are held and CARICOM was there to officiate over the elections, how could you have Caribbean states jumping up and saying, well, we recognize Juan Guaido or we recognize Maduro? No. CARICOM has one position: non-interference, non-intervention. We are not going to step on the toes of a sovereign state.
Yes. Let me tell you, we got some hot tea in here about CARICOM.
I don't want to heat up the wine, but we don't like hot wine.
Let's go to page 54. I want you to read this conclusion you have here. And just remember, this was a dissertation. I mean, you know, but I'm just reminding of you. This was a dissertation. So she was doing research for a paper and decided to turn this into a book, right? CARICOM, Good Offices, Good Neighbors. I love that title so much. It kind of reminds me of a show that used to be on TV when I was young. Neighbors, it was an Australian soap opera.
Okay.
But we won't get into that.
I was
So,
thinking of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
okay, so we're going to get into conclusion. Could you read for us that conclusion you have there on page 54?
Right, so I don't know if 54 in Spanish is the same as English. So
This here.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
So while Venezuela is not part of CARICOM, it is situated within the Caribbean basin, sharing a critical border with the Caribbean Sea. It is also an immediate neighbor of continental CARICOM member states Guyana and Suriname. Diplomatic relations, important energy cooperation, trade links, and cultural exchanges undergird the relations between this South American giant and the small island developing states. As such, maintaining cordial ties with Venezuela is of strategic importance to the preservation of peace within the Caribbean basin. I like that.
Yes, I definitely like that. Let me tell you, peace within the Caribbean basin. You know, there are sometimes you read a passage and some string of words just speaks to you. And I like that, peace within the Caribbean basin. Guys, this is a book if you're doing research or you want to know more about CARICOM in terms of the crisis that has been happening with the Venezuelan situation. This is a great book to read. I love how you put your stuff together. It was so well worded. It wasn't just an academic paper. It really, for me, I love the use of language in a very poetic way to get a message across. And I felt that you did that. Yes, I felt that you did that in this book because it did not feel like, oh, how am I going to get through this book? It's so heavy. It really felt like the information just flew off the pages as I was reading it. And I really understood what you were saying here. And I want you all to get this book if you're doing any research, if you want to know about CARICOM, wondering what's happening with it. Get Gennike Meyer's book. She's a multilingual interpreter. She is the entrepreneur of her own business, and it's called Interpreting Your Needs. And we're wrapping up today, guys. Okay, and we have some time. I'm jumping the gun. We have some time. And it's not the wine speaking. This is brunch. So we're going to take a break right now. Yeah, we're going to take a break right now, and we're going to come back to you with more on CARICOM, Good Neighbors, Good Offices with Gennike Meyer. And we're back talking to Gennike Myers about her book, CARICOM, Good Offices, Good Neighbors. And before we get back to Gennike, I want to thank our good friend Neve from From Design, the company that does floral designing, interior designing for events. Thank you very much for our centerpiece. And every Wednesday, we will be getting a fresh centerpiece from me, Design. He's a good friend of the Tobago Horticultural Society, and he was with that team that went, actually got gold at the Chelsea Flower Show earlier this year. Thank you very much for this, Neve. There's anthuriums and some other flowers in there. He told me the names, but I don't recall. It was a fancy name.
Gorgeous.
Anyway, we want to get back to Gennike. And, during the break, we were talking about this CARICOM community. And part of that CARICOM community is UWI, right? It's the University of the West Indies, the 3 campuses, and all the open campuses. And we were talking about our university experience. It is one of those experiences that creates bonds.
Absolutely.
Even beyond that university experience. You finish university and you still remember those good friends. I still remember all the friends I met. My Vinci friend, St. Lucian friends. I mean,
Don't
it's
forget
a
the Jamaicans,
long
lots of
list.
Jamaicans too.
Let me
They have
tell
a
you,
whole hall of residents just for them.
let me tell
Canada
you,
Hall.
and they were always teaching us a dance. Not it was so much fun, but there were high points and low points in meeting because there is that getting to know people and figuring out
Mhm.
personalities and all of that. What what is your perspective according to your book, CARICOM, Good Officers, Good Neighbors, in terms of that brand that we talked about? We talked about the cricket community, creating an ambassadorship really for the Caribbean. And what about UE? And we'll get into the CCJ as well, but tell us about UE in terms of your book and that experience.
So this is another area that I think is overlooked or taken for granted by most of our Caribbean nationals. We fail to identify the successes of CARICOM, and some of the successes of CARICOM are its institutions.
Mm-hmm.
The Caribbean community is not just a political organization; it has institutions and agencies that work on our behalf. So you mentioned the University of the West Indies. That is a CARICOM institution that deals in the area of education. We have brilliant scholars coming out of the region who go far and wide across the globe. And they had their first experience of tertiary education, most often than not, right here in the West Indies. Another one of my favorite CARICOM institutions is the CCJ, the Caribbean Court of Justice, for the simple reason that one, it is located here on our Trinidad and Tobago soil. Don't mind, as we say, Trinidad and Tobago has not yet signed on to it. We have not acceded to it. We do not recognize the CCJ as our final court of appeal, but we'll come back to that. Nevertheless, the fact that the Caribbean countries agreed that we needed our own judicial mechanism here, that is something that is of significance. Another one that I like in particular, because I've had to deal with in my previous role working in disaster management, is SEDIMA, the Caribbean Disaster Management and Emergency Organization. I believe they're based out in Jamaica. And we have hurricanes. We're in hurricane season right now. This morning, did you see that rain this
Oh
morning
my
in
gosh, let
Tobago?
me tell you.
Town is flooded already. But SEDIMA has been playing a very active role in preparing for disasters, all manner of disasters, not just the hurricanes, although we face those every single year. They are a very effective coordination mechanism, coordinating assistance, coordinating preparation when there is actually a hurricane in the region. They're coordinating with the meteorological services. They are prepositioning stocks so that right after the storm is gone, they can go into a country and deliver those stocks, deliver whatever assistance is needed. And also, what people don't know, they coordinate any international aid that's coming into the region. So it passes through them as a coordinating mechanism. So many more agencies I could talk about, but those are my favorite
Yeah,
ones.
I didn't know that they coordinate the aid. That's important. When we look at the CARICOM community and what they've achieved, this is their 50th year of anniversary. And again,
Our 50th year.
yes,
Our 50th
our
year.
50th, we
Yes.
have to own it. Happy 50th anniversary to all our CARICOM brothers and sisters across the Caribbean and even in the diaspora. We leave home sometimes and we live other places. But what I was, as a Caribbean person, as a Trinidad and Tobago national, sometimes we don't always enjoy the benefits. And I know that a lot of entrepreneurs out there have had some gripes. CARICOM, we have some issues with the trade agreements. We want to be able to do export and travel more smoothly and fluidly throughout the Caribbean. We're just putting out a plug through the, through the Tobago Update Studio. Please fix it. We want to be able to travel right here in the Caribbean, a few miles to the left and right. You want to be able to see your brothers and sisters in the CARICOM
And we don't want to have to swim to
community.
get there.
We
don't
don't
have
want to
to
have to
swim.
swim, but we want to get there more fluidly, more easily, and we want it to pull more less on our pocket to get there. Right? It's too close for the expense that we feel we have to pay, and when we look at the CCJ, I just gonna give you the eye. What's going on with our, why aren't we in the CCJ? I don't understand. We just went through emancipation celebration,
I'm going to
heading
shake my
into
head on that one.
independence. celebration, and when we look at it as creatives, as authors, I feel like, we should have we should have our own thing, and if that is not where it is supposed to be yet, let's work on getting it there. Come
So
on.
certainly some Caribbean countries have recognized that, the more progressive ones. Barbados believes, Dominica, I'm calling names, Guyana,
Yes.
most recently St. Lucia, signed up. And when I say signed up, they signed up to say, hey, we don't need to go to the Privy Council in the UK anymore. We don't need to consult with the Lords of Great Britain anymore.
No more
We
wigs.
have our own thing.
Yeah.
We will make the Caribbean Court of Justice our final court of appeal. Now, something that I learned recently, the Caribbean Court of Justice actually has two functions. So it's not just a court of appeal, but it is also the organization that protects, and I'm reading here, it protects the rights of countries, businesses, and citizens of the CARICOM under the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. So basically, they're the ones who are responsible for interpreting that law, the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, for us as Caribbean nations. No other court in the world has the privilege of interpreting our law. So we have our law, and we get to interpret it, and we get to enforce it. And I think that is a sign of maturity for us when we can say, listen, when things go south, because all of our countries, we deal with some form of crime or criminality at some point or the other, whether it's in the sphere of business, fraudulent transactions, whether it's in other spheres. But some of our countries have matured enough to acknowledge that we don't need to go any further than our own region, our own Caribbean Court of Justice, to be able to come to final decisions, final adjudications on matters that are of importance to us. And I salute those countries who have made this move.
We do, and
we are waiting for Trinidad and Tobago.
We take a sip.
We are waiting for Trinidad and Tobago.
Of wine.
We're having water, not wine. Wine turned into water.
Yeah,
water
cheers to those Caribbean countries who are in the CCJ. And I love that you brought up what the CCJ does. I think that's an important distinction, that they're there to interpret that revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. I love that. Gennike, before we go, tell us one thing that you learned while writing this book, CARICOM, Good Neighbors, Good Officers, that you didn't know before. And we're heading into wrapping up with this quote from Gennike.
So actually, the quote is going to be a quote from, I think, the Caribbean's most active Prime Minister, the Honorable Mia Mottley.
Oh, we love her.
Prime Minister of Barbados. And so I came across, of course, in researching for the book, she was one of the more active advocates speaking out on behalf of CARICOM. And so just beyond, what we see of her publicly, I really got into her speeches. And one quote that stood out for me and still stands today is F before I, family before ideology. We live in a region where we don't have that great diversity of political ideologies. It's not like in the United States where you have the Democrats and Republicans. In the Caribbean, it's, I want to say it's more ethnic, or you vote along the traditional lines. Whoever your parents voted for, you vote for them too.
Yeah.
But what Prime Minister Mia Mottley said there, family before ideology, is significant. And I want to encourage us to really look at our Caribbean neighbors. As family, we are part of a family.
Yes.
Maybe sometimes our family is a bit dysfunctional. Maybe there's some sibling rivalry within our Caribbean family. But I totally stand behind Prime Minister the Honorable Mia Mottley when she says family first before
on
ideology.
That note, we're heading into wrapping up. We want to thank the viewers across the Caribbean community, Trinidad and Tobago, for sticking with us at Book Club Corner, where every Wednesday we talk to authors and publishers. And next Wednesday on Tobago Updates, we'll be talking to yet another local author. Stay tuned to our Facebook page, our Instagram account, and we'll tell you who that author is. Gennike, we want to thank you for being with us. Gennike Myers.
Merci.
Good Offices, Good Neighbors, CARICOM Community. And thank you for viewing with us.
Santé, merci. And salut Antoine, notre francophone qui parle. The producer who speaks French. Cheers to you too.
Cheers, Antoine.